talking about the American woman and how she has changed over the last 50 or so years. And this, Trudy, is a really hot topic in the church today, is the women's role in the church. Are we able to pastor or lead, and where has that evolved today from maybe 40 or 50 years ago?
Right. So I think that the best answer to that is a question with a question. Would God create only half of his creation to be vessels to spread the gospel? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. And I know the verse that's always quoted is the one by Paul, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Yes. John Ortberg, I heard a podcast of his about gender roles. And what he says, and this may shake things up a little bit, but he said in the church, he made such a great point that in Genesis, before the fall, men and women were both created in God's image, therefore equal. It was only after the curse that men ruling over women became the curse.
Right.
But Jesus came to set us free from the curse. So why are we still trying to implement the curse in the church?
Love that.
Wow.
That's
Great. I thought that was huge.
Good.
Well, I thought that was a great point.
I think, if you look all throughout the Bible, I think that God's purpose is that he uses whom he will.
Yes.
And he used Deborah for such a time as that. She was one of those women. She was a judge. She was also a person who was epic and, a military great strategist. She called Barak. She even gave Barak command. And then, we fast forward to the New Testament and we see Jesus Christ himself. It was a time when women weren't even really allowed to come in the synagogue, but you find Jesus inviting women to come sit at his feet, inviting women to travel with him, inviting women to minister with him. And then even at a time when men didn't have a backbone, when all the disciples were hiding and, doing backsliding, here comes a woman that, she takes the message that says what he's alive, he's risen. So I find that in me that there's a place for women. I'm not intimidated by women. I'm not intimidated by women, but I think that as leadership and men, we have to help women to understand their roles. I think that when women begin to try to usurp that authority, then yes, we're out of order. But
see, you use that word twice, and I think it's paramount, the word usurp, and that's how the Bible teaches that a woman is not to usurp authority over a man. And so we kind of sometimes deal with women teaching and everything else, but it's really a matter of usurping the authority, and that's what the Bible really deals with. But I think part of the issue is that we have to understand the difference between how God sees things and how man sees things, and because of how man sees things, how God instituted his order. And so we know that before God, there's neither male nor female. But the bottom line, so he'll use everybody and anybody. But on the earth, he has also put a certain structure so that men will know how to function and that he's the head of it all. And so we can't negate what he does for the earth for what he says he is, because he's a father of spirits. So therefore, then we'd have to negate our own bodies and we'd have to negate our own selves. And so we have to really be careful how we do that, how do we separate that, because it is really the fact that God initiates everything. And so like you said, Lee, once we deal with the structure on the earth, there is a part and place for everyone, and none of it is subservient. All of it is equal. But it's just, and all of it is as important, but just different function.
Well, let me ask Lee. So I was at a church recently volunteering, and I gave them my resume, and I am an ordained pastor, and they looked at me in love, pretty much, and said, and they said, "You, just so you know, you will have no leadership. You can have no leadership at this church." And I was just going to volunteer my services, and they just said, "You will have no leadership." Do you think it's out of fear or misinterpretation, or what do you think? Some churches.
I think it's really out of fear, because to me, depending on your role, if you're just coming, like you say, to volunteer, and for me, women wanting to lead prayer, there for me is many aspects as a pastor. I feel that God has sent women there to assist and help, because there are some things I cannot do, and some areas I'm not comfortable even speaking to, and we need women who are godly and women who know the word that can help to instruct other women, So for someone to say that, I think that's more.
But you see, we've kind of been skirting around a little bit, though, because your original question here was about, in essence, a woman pastor. And as we talked, though, we keep skirting around to a woman can be an assistant, a leader. But have we really kind of answered the question, can they be a pastor of a church? Or is this getting too heavy now?
No,
I don't think it is. And I think you're right. And that's part of the issue, is that we deal with and we walk around those harsh topics or those hard topics. But the reality is, it's not that God can't use a woman as pastor. That's not the issue. The issue is, what did he institute?
Yeah.
And so we have to understand that it's not against God, or it's not evil, it's not wrong for there to be a single parent woman, but it's that what he instituted. Okay, so we can't say, well, that's right now, and that's part of what we do also within the church. But also, I've been around a lot of women pastors, and you can always tell the ones that are anointed by God to do what they do.
Right.
A woman pastor who's anointed by God will always raise up leading men.
Right.
A woman by God who's not, she'll always want the women to lead the men.
And vice versa. Vice versa. I mean, a man who is secure in who he is in his relationship with God will not suppress a woman just because she's a woman.
But that's not what we're talking about right now. I agree with you in the sense of that is not correct either.
Right.
But we're dealing with on the reverse right now, and I think what I'm saying is that, you know, with the usurp, we have to be careful that we don't just put women down because they're women.
Well, and I think a lot of the controversies came from Paul's comment in 1 Corinthians, I believe it was 14 through 34, 36. Women need to be silent. So you have to take it all into the context of what he was teaching and the time he was teaching it in and why. A lot of it, I feel, it was for the protection of those women because they were in such a religious environment headed up by Pharisees. It was hostile to new Christians and new believers, and many of those women kept interrupting, asking questions, and his comment was, save your questions and ask your husband at home. So from that, we've developed all kinds of denominations and theologies.
But that was not the end of Paul's perspective on it, because later you'll see Paul working with women like Lydia, Phoebe, all these
Agabus,
other women.
Amia,
all these women that were leading and developing ministries, and they were going forth, you know, in the power of God.
But what we also need to take a look at, I think you bring up a good point in that we have to understand as to, you know, who he was talking to, the time and place, what was going on at the time. And so as we look at the landscape now of America and around the world, we are also in a time that we have to make sure that we bring right doctrine in the presence of this. Because right now, all the movements of the world are moving into the church. And so if we don't act preemptively in a sense of making sure that we stay correctly in the process, then we get overtaken by that as well. Not because women have malice or anything else, but because the movement is strategized by Satan to do what it's going to do.
I was just going to say one quick thing, and you know, I asked Joyce Meyer what she thought about this very topic, and so she actually wrote back. I like to think it was Joyce, but anyway, real quick, I know we're running out of time. You know, I think at the end Jesus says you'll know them by their fruit, and her answer was so gracious. It was like, no, don't bring strife. It's not about that. It's about using people who are going to feed the poor, you know, clothe the poor, the widows, all that. So I love that.
That's great. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more from the Christian View. Welcome back to the Christian View. We have had a great discussion today on the American woman, and it's been great. But what I want to encourage you to do, if you're a woman out there, whatever the Lord has put in your hands to do it with excellence and do it as unto the Lord. All right, y'all have a great day, and don't forget to check us out on Facebook and visit us on our website. Take care. Bye-bye.